Well, what would you say to someone who is doubting compassion? And what would you respond as a neuroscientist to kind of once and for all explain why compassion really is so important in this dialogue that we're having as humanity right now and as leaders of various fields?
Well, I think that people need to realize if you look at the evolution of our species and what has allowed our species to survive, fundamentally, it's compassion. And what I mean by that is, unlike other species, our offspring um, require us to care for them well over a decade, if not significantly longer, because they don't run off into the jungle and the forest and are able to survive. If we don't care for them, they will die. And that is an immense requirement in terms of time and resources. So why would you do that? And the why is that when you do that, there are certain hormones or neurotransmitters released, such as oxytocin, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the love or affiliation or bonding or nurturing hormone. And when that is released, it stimulates our pleasure and reward centers. And so we feel good about caring for those who need us, our offspring, whether they're hungry, whether they're in pain, whether they're suffering in some other way. So when we care, we are rewarded, which of course is a significant motivator. But the other aspect is when you're in that state, not only does your brain and the cognitive brain networks function at their best, but also your peripheral physiology functions at its best. And the sympathetic nervous system, which is, of course, the opposite of what we were just talking about, the parasympathetic nervous system, is the flight, fight, or freeze response. Well, in ancient times, as an example, 200,000 years ago, when we were on the savannah in Africa, if the grass moved, we recognize that as a probable predator. It stimulated our sympathetic nervous system. It resulted in a lot of immediate physiologic and changes, as well as change in our brain function, in the sense that it shut down our executive control networks and thus resulting in us taking the shortest path to survive. But it was only meant to be very transitory. And then you would return to the state of engagement of your rest and digest system or your parasympathetic nervous system. It was not meant to be turned on all the time. And unfortunately, our DNA has not changed in the 200,000 years since we were on the savannah in Africa. And the nature of modern society, for many people, chronically activates it, which creates a lot of issues in terms of fear, anxiety, stress, and being able to return to the state we're meant to be in not only gives us much more ability to be discerning in how we make decisions, but actually our physiology works its best. It's associated with increased longevity. And so there are many, many positive aspects. The challenge is how do we live in that place and not the stress place? And the great thing is that we have a choice, and that is training our minds. And you mentioned about manifestation. I do want to point out, though, that one of the issues for many people is that who we are today is a product of our past, and that can be for good and for bad. Unfortunately, many people in our society carry baggage as a result of childhood negative experiences, and they are not aware of it. So all of us have been manifesting, however inefficiently that may be. But the problem is that for many people, every decision they make, every relationship they have relates to the baggage that they carry with them, and they're not aware of it. As an example, I'm sure you have known people who will sit there and say, I don't understand what's happening. You know, I've been divorced 3 times and I've married the exact same partner every time, right? Because they don't understand the drivers that are having them make those decisions. So I think one of the important things is to take time to understand what you're already manifesting,
Mm.
and gain some insights into that baggage. As for me, I mean, one of the challenges was a sense of abandonment or not being nurtured or being poor. And those drove a lot of my behaviors. Um, I think the other aspect is to also um, understand the difference between what you think you want and what you actually need. And we've already discussed that a little bit. Many people chase material things under the illusion or delusion that that will make them happy. Yet, if you focus your goals on being of service to others, you can get all of the material things if you wish, but the greatest gift you're giving yourself and what will ultimately make you happy is purely the aspect of being of service or caring for others and making their lives a little bit better, because that's how we evolved as a species. One of the things you mentioned is you can't just sit around, though, and wait for things to happen. You know, you could use the trope of God only helps those who help themselves. And so you have to work at it. But each of us has the tools inside of ourselves to make that happen. The problem with so many people is, and as you know, the first line of my book says the universe doesn't give a fuck about you. And what I mean by that is it has no fucks to give. So many people give their self-agency away to something they believe is outside of themselves. If I just do this entity outside of myself, the universe is going to grant me my wish. And this is fundamentally the basis of a lot of the popular woo-woo pseudoscience narratives about manifestation. There is nothing outside yourself. Nobody's going to come to your rescue. And what I mean by that is when we have negative self-talk, which is so common, it's as if we're placing a brick to build our own prison, and the walls get higher and it gets darker. Yet the reality is you have the key to release yourself from the prison in your pocket at all times. You just have to believe it. And this is part of the problem with limiting or limited beliefs, because oftentimes those are a manifestation of the baggage you've been carrying or what you've been told. So you have given yourself agency to others, yet you are the owner of it. You just have to understand that, believe it, and do actually training, if you will, to empower yourself. And this training is fairly straightforward, which I talk about in my book. While I call it mind magic, the magic is fairly easy to acquire and learn. And once you do that and you see how this empowers people and how it completely changes how they see the world. In fact, this is what happened to me when I understood that when I, one, was more thoughtful and kind to myself, but also when I took responsibility, it changed how I saw myself, which changed how I saw the world. And what I tell people is once you do that, the world changes how it sees you. And actually, most people want to help you and be kind to you. But when you create a narrative of being hypercritical with yourself, there's a tendency to look through that same lens at others.
Mm. And then what happens when we feel that energy? Our sympathetic nervous system gets activated and we're back in that place of fear. I have to share as a personal commentary, because I was looking forward to this conversation. Of course, I'm a little bit nervous. I had a bit of a hassle with the headphones and so a bit of nervousness. But what I'm noticing is this co-regulation of a smile, the warmth, the gentle presence, how it's influencing me and my performance, that you're actually um, helping me to have a good performance here. And that, the reason why I want to bring this up is for those people who are leaders who are listening to this, who are leading teams, is that would you speak a little bit, Dr. Doty, to this idea of how we can actually, through our own presence and through the nervous system, influence so that our teams can have really good performance? Because that, again, goes into this place where we can have a massive impact on the people around us by how we show up.
Sure, and I think that's a very important point. As you know, whether you call it vibration, oscillation, or the release of electromagnetic energy, certainly your heart actually probably has about, depending on who you read, 10x or 500x the amount of energy that your brain oscillations release. But regardless, that energy extends 3 to 5 feet outside of your body. But the important point is that when you have a calmness about you, this affects other people. And unfortunately, there are leaders who have become leaders out of their own fear and anxiety, and they feel that intimidation or creating fear somehow motivates people. And it can on the short term, but certainly not on the long term. And the reason is that when you create an environment where people feel good about themselves, and I'm sure you've been in a situation where, as an example, you may be at a meeting and the boss walks in the room and he says, "Listen, I just wanted to thank all of you for all the work you've been doing." He names everybody's name. He says,
Exactly.
I'm so appreciative of what you've contributed to our organization, and you are what has made us a success. And first of all, I want to thank you before we go and talk about X, Y, or Z. I mean, the very nature of doing that makes people feel calm. They make people feel respected. You recognize everyone's dignity, and they want to work for you. And when you create this environment where you put them in the parasympathetic nervous system mode, if you will, um, because this is when your cognitive brain networks function at their best. You cannot pay them enough. They're more productive. They're more engaged. They're more creative. Actually, healthcare expenses dramatically decrease because, unfortunately, at a lot of high pressure companies that are so demanding, this creates a lot of health issues. Because what a lot of people don't appreciate is that, again, your mind is directly connected to your body. If you feel unappreciated, unhappy, this results in a lot of mind-body disconnects, whether it's headache, whether it's gastrointestinal problems, whether it's back pain, et cetera, et cetera. It can go on and on and on. And these are very expensive. Yet the cure is simply kindness. And but it also affects human resource costs, because if you have employees who are unhappy, frequently they're constantly looking for another job, or they won't accept a promotion. And as a result, your human resource costs go up. So when you create the right environment, that changes everything. There's some companies that it's not really clearly evident. If you're working for, let's say, a healthcare company who's creating some gadget that saves lives, you can sit there and go, God, what I'm doing is really important. But sometimes if you're making a little widget for a car that you can't see any relevance to what you're doing in life, or it doesn't seem to have any meaning and purpose, you can also, though, do something else that's a little different to inspire employees. You can sit there and say, listen, the work you're doing has made us a success. What we're going to do is we're going to have a day where, as a company, we're going to pick 3 charities that we're going to support. Or we're giving you X number of hours a month to do charity work, et cetera, where you feel that the company is interested in doing activities that help other people. And in this case, it may not be directly by what the company is doing, but by how they're reacting to the problems of the world by giving you an opportunity to care. And this is very important. So there's a whole manner of ways in which you can make individuals feel important, because none of us want to be treated like a widget either. That, well, if you don't perform, we're going to fire you, or you're so meaningless to us, we're going to give you the absolute minimum wage and also try to screw you at every turn. Nothing could be worse for an individual in terms of personally. But frankly, you just look at how people act this way, that somehow they think that by screwing people to make more money, that in the long run, that's going to benefit them. And like I said, it may in the short term, but it's also creating issues for themselves, because all the money in the world is not going to make you feel whole. And having $1 billion in the bank when you die, I would say, is one of the worst things that can possibly happen. First of all, money oftentimes ruins generations of individuals in families, but unless you have a purpose and meaning in life to be supportive of those who are less fortunate, then frankly, I'm not sure what kind of a life that is.